And you're in landscape. Amazing.
Or we're just running off the computer's webcam here.
Oh, no, that's good, man. Most people are in portrait, and you have to kind of reframe it for the.
Oh, is it because they're sitting with their phone?
Yeah, exactly. Like the last one I did with this actress, it was a really good interview, but I'll take that later. Yeah, it was tricky because what do you do? Do you put her on the screen at the same time? So I just decided to put black either side and just put her in the middle. Okay, should be ready. Just making sure that's recording. Because the worst thing is, I had like 3 or 4 separate audio sources, like the second to last one, and I realized half of it was pointless because the Zoom audio is really good anyway for the recording, and it mixes it and does an edit. So when you watch your Zoom recording back, it flicks between the people speaking.
Okay.
Which is cool.
Have you seen the Nvidia thing that's just been released?
No, what's that?
The RTX Voice, which it eliminates background noise completely. It's nuts.
Well, yeah, send me that over. Send me a link to that.
Yeah, there was one of the Linus Tech Tips channels. I think it's called on Short Circuit. I think it is. Did a demo of it, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But they got kids shouting in the background, Hoover going in the background.
Oh, like a proper field test.
Yeah, and yeah, it did like really well.
Oh, awesome! That's very cool. One thing I wanted to ask you about, well, I might actually wait, is obviously about your film, but I'm insanely jealous of your van. Is that something you've had for a while? How? Because I saw the time lapse earlier, and how long did you have the actual van for before you kind of kitted it out?
Oh,
it's
a saga.
It is quite a saga.
This is technically our third van between us, where we had one that I bought before we got together, and it broke down 6 miles after I bought it, and then had to do a complete engine replacement on it.
And just as he got it to a point where he was like, okay, this is a solid van, I can start converting this, I happened. And suddenly that van was far too small for 2 people.
Oh, so what kind of van was it before you met?
So I had a, what was it? Vauxhall Vivaro kind of size.
Okay, so that's a little bit shorter, but tiny bit wider, all about the same width.
Yeah, it's like your standard transit van kind of size.
It's sort of like a workman's panel van.
Yeah.
Quite small, perfect for 1 person, not so much for 2. And then the dog came along as well, and it was way too small for 3 of us.
We had a van in between that was an LDV that we were going to be going on a trip for 6 months. And that van rusted, the front completely rusted through to the point where we didn't realize at the time, but the driver's seat was actually starting to corrode, like the base of it was corroding away. So half of it wasn't attached to the floor anymore by the time the MOT came around.
Yeah, the mechanic kind of went, I'm amazed you haven't fallen through to the road yet. And we were like
Flintstones van.
Yeah, so then
it was really disappointing because we'd spent 2 years like lovingly converting it and saving up money and gradually making our way, and we got its MOT, or didn't get it rather, only a few weeks after we'd both sort of put in with our jobs. Like I put in for a 6-month sabbatical to go on this big trip around Europe for 6 months that we'd been aiming for. Well, he'd been aiming for since he was about 18.
But long story short, I used to work with Chris at
SA.
Yeah. And it was when there was the big shake up there and I got made redundant, kind of out of choice. And then that's right, we'll do the trip next year, save up, different jobs, whatever. And
I put in with work, with like the van's nearly there, we'll get it through its MOT, it'll be fine. I got my leave confirmed. And then the mechanic was like, yeah, it's screwed, guys. That's it.
Imagine going on that trip. Imagine going on that trip and it doing that.
Yeah. And we were just like, oh God. And he said it's going to cost more than we paid for it just to start on the welding, let alone everything else. So he was basically like, yeah, you're done. It's done. So we were aiming to leave in the March, so sort of end of March, beginning of April. So we were like, right, we've got 3 months.
Was that last year, sorry?
Year before last, it was in 2018. And they sort of went, right, we've got 3 months to find a new van, buy it, and convert it and leave.
So, long story short, we panic bought a van at an auction. I kitted it out between working and whatever, and then we left about a month later than we planned to.
But you did convert a van in like 6 weeks,
Yeah.
which is pretty impressive. But he did strip everything out of the old van and throw it in the new one. Like, cool, that'll do.
Yeah. Did you kind of was there much money lost in terms of what you upgraded or did to it, or was it more just kind of labor?
It was more labor. I mean, there wasn't a lot of the stuff that was costly that was going into it anyway. Most of what is in the new van. Everything that we could take out of the old van was put into the new van. So
the pricey stuff like the solar panels on the roof and the kitchen unit.
Oh, I don't see that from the pictures you see.
yeah.
Oh yeah, we've got it. We're totally off grid with it. It's great.
I love it. I've got so much. It gives me nostalgia for when I went traveling before I went to uni, in a really positive way. And as soon as I started looking at your account, when you kind of first submitted your film, I was like, I'm so jealous. But I could tell by speaking to Chris, and a bit of context for everyone watching, I'm going to put pictures up about what we're talking about, or like just like a random chat. But yeah, you seem like really good people, and it comes across in your account. There's nothing kind of pretentious about it, and that's what I'm digging, and that's what we're seeing a lot of that from people submitting films. Is there's nothing super pretentious. There's nothing wrong with doing something really strong and arty or whatever. But yeah, I really dig this account now. So I have to keep traveling. But yeah, some very cool.
Much traveling at the minute.
I know that was one of my questions I was thinking of before, was that how are you getting on with your isolation, considering you seem to be very, you love the outdoors and that,
Tom's losing it.
I'm losing it a bit. I mean, thankfully, because I mainly do work as a food delivery for Deliveroo, Just Eat, and that kind of stuff. So I'm technically classed as a key worker. So as much as I'm still working outside, and it's been really nice being able to enjoy the weather. So for me, it's not been so bad, and we've also got a dog who's.
I'll bring him over.
Oh, please do.
Raffin.
We've got another interview tomorrow, and it's from a couple in Canada, and their dog's the main feature. It's a talking dog. So you'll love that. I'll share that with you in due course. That film, yeah.
Here you go, sweetie. This is Raffin. He's a rescue dog from Spain. We've had him about 2 years now.
So how did that work? How did that work when you got him in Spain? Was it was it easy to bring him back, or?
Well, we didn't actually get him from Spain. He was a street dog in Spain, and we don't really have any history on him. All we know is that he'd been in the shelter for about a year at this point, just in basically a concrete kennel with a bunch of other dogs for a year.
Yeah. And
a charity found him called Griffin Adopt UK, and they go around to various different shelters and look for the dogs that, not that any dog deserves to be in a shelter, but the really sweet-natured ones, the ones that you can't understand why they're not with a family or why they're not a part of somebody's home. And they found him and they put his profile online. And the way it works is that you find their profile online. The agency sends someone out to do a home check with you, and if you pass, then they'll put your dog on the Freedom Bus and bring them over, and they tour around the UK and drop off all the dogs. But unfortunately, nobody had seen Raffin by the time the Freedom Bus came to leave, and nobody had really expressed much interest in him, and he wasn't going to get to come on the Freedom Bus. And the shelter, the charity sort of said to the shelter, okay, maybe next time. And the shelter said, well, he's getting put down next week if he doesn't go with you now.
Oh, wow.
And the charity went, cool, we'll take him. We'll take him with us. And they had the few days drive from Spain to the UK to try and find a foster placement, because they don't have kennels, they don't have a shelter set up in the UK. It's literally shelter bus home. And a lovely lady called Cynthia in Stoke-on-Trent said that she would take him in, which was great for us because about a month later we saw his profile, and we went over and got him, and he's been with us ever since. And we got him a few months before we went on our big trip, and we did think it was going to be hard traveling with the dog in the van for 6 months. We didn't really know how he was going to react, but he took to it brilliantly. And whereas we were a bit worried he was going to hinder us a bit on our trip, we thought he might, prevent us from doing a lot of things. He actually added to it. He made the trip.
Yeah, like honestly. Trying to jump onto the jetty from the boat.
Yes. Yes.
I've watched that. I've watched that so many times now.
Oh, he tried so hard.
You almost think every time you watch it, even though you've seen it, he's going to make it.
He can jump way further than that as well. He's got a great leap on him, but his back feet slid on the wet surface.
Right.
Yeah, and he just couldn't quite make it. And he would look so confused when I pulled him onto the pontoon. He's just looking at me like, I'm sure I could have made that. We were like, I'm sure you could too, mate, but it was slippy, wasn't it?
That's amazing. I've got to say, if what we'll do is we'll put links up in the description on YouTube and on the website to your account, because you're good-natured people, and it's really, really nice because travel's fantastic. Like I did it for a few months around Europe, and before I went to university, and it was the best time. Met the best people. I met some great people. I met people in Cyprus, and then when we came back to Amsterdam, it was our last stop. The same people were there in the same cafe. I'm like, what are you doing here? Because you would think, oh, they've got the same. Because we used that Eurorail or whatever it was. The tickets you can get to go around Europe, and it was just such a massive coincidence, and you meet so many decent people that are traveling as well. Was that kind of a similar experience for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, the most similar one for us was we met some people in Croatia who were traveling around. They'd flown over from Australia, and they'd actually flown into, because we're from the Wirral, they'd flown into Manchester and then driven down to Croatia. They'd almost kind of taken the same route as we did, apart from they were maybe 2 or 3 weeks behind us, but it was weird seeing them at sort of our furthest point. And then when we got home, they were like, yeah, our flight's like next week. Do you want to meet up before we head out?
And so we saw them in Croatia, and then we saw them on the Wirral, which was slightly bizarre.
It is because you think Croatia, and it's incredible weather from what I've seen and all of that. And everyone's seen it because of, I was going to say Dragon's Den, Game of Thrones. But, it's, and then back in the Wirral, or because I'm originally from Ellesmere Port, or, the Strawberry Roundabout there, that's where I used to live. So those two completely different places, it must have been insane, It was
so weird though, because we'd literally been back a week, and, Croatia was sort of the midpoint of our journey. We'd been back a week, and they were just like, hi guys, we're here, can we come see you? And we were like, yes, of course you can, come on out, this is weird.
Yeah,
but Croatia was also a bit odd because we'd been on holiday to Split in Croatia the previous year, and we'd flown there. And then we drove back to the same city. We drove to Split.
Oh, wow.
And we were just sort of sat there like, we're here in our van.
What made it weirder as well is we had a friend come out and visit us then as well. And we picked her up from the airport that we'd previously flown to.
That's amazing.
It was so odd.
You guys must have gotten a real sense of the size of Europe, though, or a size of many countries, because you don't. You really don't get a sense of that, do you, when you fly?
No, I mean, with the weird thing we found is that we'd sort of made a promise to ourselves that we wouldn't drive unless there was something that we really wanted to go and do that was a time limited. We promised we wouldn't drive any more than 2 hours a day, because we didn't want the whole trip to be driving.
And we didn't want to miss anything, and that was kind of one of the things that Raffin the dog really lent to us, because if we drove for too long, we got worried that he'd get hot or he'd need the toilet or something like that. So we'd stop and let him out to stretch his legs. And the amount of hidden gems that we found.
I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, yeah.
Yeah, we never would have thought of it. We found this amazing lake just in the middle of nowhere. And we just looked on the map and we thought, oh, the dog looks hot. Let's find somewhere he can have a little swim. And we just went, oh, looks like there's a bit of water down there. Let's go and have a look. And it was this gorgeous lake.
Is it the one? Which one is it? I was watching. This is a crazy. If it's the same link, it'll be crazy. You might not have seen it. There's a show Band of Brothers. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
In the very last episode, obviously the wall's finished. There's no spoilers there, but the second one was finished, and one of the characters goes swimming, and it looks exactly the same. And it's such a strange coincidence. Which one is it? Is it the one with the huge mountains in the background?
Sorry about that. Our router threw a hissy fit.
No worries, no worries. I sent you a couple of emails, so just with my mobile number on and that. So
yeah, I mean, you just suddenly froze.
I know I was going. Have I done something wrong?
No, I don't know why, but our router downstairs suddenly went. "Ah!" And, yeah.
Oh mate, I hate it. I hate all that stuff.
We're just grateful we had a router. When we moved into this house at the beginning of lockdown, we didn't have internet for 2 weeks. It was not fun.
For 2 weeks, no internet.
No, yeah. And I could just see everyone on Facebook going, oh, I'm so bored, I've got nothing to do. And I'm going, do you have Netflix? Yes. Then why are you complaining? We don't even have Wi-Fi.
So if anyone didn't quite understand, you guys didn't have internet for the first 2 weeks of lockdown.
Yeah.
So the more context is that Steffi's mum's on there. We were living with Steffi's mum.
Because when we came back from our trip, we understandably were broke because we'd spent all our money on the travelling. And my mum, being the lovely, wonderful, supportive person that she is, welcomed us with open arms and said that we could move in with her. And which was great, but because of the coronavirus, she is the highest tier at risk because she has a debilitating lifelong condition where she already has breathing difficulties on her best days. Very rare condition. It took us a year just to get a diagnosis. And she's permanently on a very high dose of steroids. And they're giving her experimental treatment with various strands of chemotherapy. So she's very, very high risk. And I was due to start a new job on the 23rd of March, which was the day that everything really went into lockdown. And my mum sort of went, I love you, but with you starting this new job, where I was going to be around a lot of people, I needed to get out. And we'd been renovating my nan's place for the last sort of couple of years, because she went into a nursing home. And so we'd sort of been gradually sort of building the place up, making it really nice. And my mum was like, great, it's perfect, off you go. So we got the carpets in on the Saturday because it was a complete renovation. So we were literally putting the carpets in on the Saturday and we moved in on the Monday. So it was quite a rush job. And because we weren't expecting it, we didn't have things like internet set up. So we sort of had to get that set up ASAP, but we had to wait for the installation because it's quite an old house.
Yeah, exactly.
It never had internet before, so we sort of had to have that installed, and so we had to wait for 2 weeks. And the first week of that wasn't too bad because I was in my new job. I was in it for exactly 1 week, and then I was non-essential, so I got sent home.
Are you on furlough?
Unfortunately not, because I'd only been in the job for a week. I'd missed the bracket.
Wow.
So I'm not on furlough, which is great. So yeah, that's been a bit unfortunate, but it's meant we had more time on our hands, hence we decided to do the video.
Well, I really do appreciate you coming on and telling us these things as well, because that's what, when Chris and I had the original idea, I've said this several times now on different videos, but when we had the original idea, it was a competition, not a competition, but a friendly thing between the two of us, sending each other creations, things we've done at home. And then I had the idea of, why don't we have more of a festival and invite people in? And when we had that idea and I went back to the office, I was on my lunch break, I thought, right, I'm going to buy all the domains, I'm going to get the Twitter, I'm going to get all of it because I know someone else is going to have the same idea.
Yeah.
So, and then through this podcast, we've done, I think we've recorded 5 episodes so far. We've got another 4 being filmed the next 4 days, including yours. And you're getting a real perspective of how people are getting on. Like yesterday, we filmed one with 7 students, and they produced a film. They sent footage to one particular film student. They're all great friends, and they're based in Cornwall, and their kind of social circles are all to do with the beach and going out and spending time outside. So you can imagine their perspective is unique like yours. So do you say that is your mum still getting the care? Is she still going through the treatment?
She's still going. It's the only time she's allowed to leave the house is to go to chemotherapy. She's in full lockdown. She's not leaving at all. We go and visit her every couple of days because thankfully we're like 5 minutes down the road from her, which is good. So we'll take the dog to visit her because she really misses the dog. And we can sort of send him in so she can get a little bit of a cuddle because...
Oh, that's lovely. That's really lovely.
Because we're quite tactile people.
Yeah. I can get a real sense of that by your Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, we're very sort of physically affectionate. Not just me and Tom, but like my mum and most of my family. We're very sort of affectionate people. So since I can't hug her, I sort of send the dog in. But it means we can bring her shopping. I mean, literally just before we started the call with you, we popped round and just took her some milk because she said she was running low on milk.
Yeah, I've noticed how important. I've noticed how important that contact is. Even with Vicky and I, we moved into this house. It's on the Dale Barracks, the old army barracks in Chester. And
I used to deliver the post there.
Yeah,
I used to be a postie.
Oh, that's amazing. It's a bit of a unique place to live as well. I used to go to parties when I was like 10 years old because a friend of mine, his dad was in the army and he was based here, so. It's a very odd place sometimes. But our neighbour next door, she lost her husband 2 or 3 months ago, and I always offer like, do you want to have a cup of tea over the fence, like it's a scene from Home Improvement, like.
Yeah.
And it's you don't realise how valuable your own, just spending a moment with someone is, and how they don't necessarily depend on you, but that moment can really give them a huge amount of relief. And I think it's so important, especially now. Really, really is. Like, in a very small way, when I started this lockdown and I was working at home, the first couple of days, I was in tears because I just was so used to talking to people at work, and it was incredibly difficult for me because my Vicky, she was going to Bourton Heath Health Practice where she works for the NHS, and I was on my own, and I really don't like spending time on my own most of the time, So it's hitting everyone like yourselves in a very unique and different way. But that's what we wanted the festival for, is to kind of connect people and create a sense of community as well. So at some point we're going to try and get a group chat with a lot of the filmmakers and share the films between everyone before anyone else gets to see it. So we're going to try and do that as well. So Tom, did you have the original idea, or was it a joint effort? Or for your?
It was actually Steffi's original idea, where it was so the sport I practiced.
Sorry, what's your film called?
A Slackline Day In.
That's right. Yeah. I just checked that.
Yeah. So slacklining is my main hobby, which is visually very similar to tightrope walking, but as opposed to walking on a piece of wire, it's a flat piece of tape, like normally about 1 inch wide. And we saw one of the skiing stop motions that was that did the viral rounds, and then Steph's like, we should do a slackline one of those.
Well, he's missing slacklining so much. I was like, well, let's do it on the living room floor. We've only just moved into this place. There's nothing in here. I mean, all we've got in the living room.
That's a really good point. You don't, because it's a really nice idea, really fun idea. You don't think that, oh yeah, they've removed everything, but no, nothing was in there.
Well, all we had in there was a sofa and a chair. So we just dragged that into the other room, and we're just like, yep, okay, right, that was easy. It's not like we've got a lot of stuff to turf out. I mean, to be honest, the hardest thing to get out was the dog.
Yeah.
He kept trying to come back into the room. And
he wants to get involved.
He did. He kept coming in, and you see the moment we give up trying to keep him out of the room because we didn't film it all in order. And the last thing we filmed was the part where Tom's sort of falling through the air. And that's where the dog features most heavily, because we just got tired of him crying outside the room or trying to get him to sit out of camera shot. And if you watch the film quite closely, you can see little paws at various edges of the frame, just sort of like edging their way on, or a nose just gradually getting further.
I'll have to look out for that. That's great. That's like a little insider knowledge. That's great.
Yeah, you can just occasionally see like a tail in a couple of frames, or like paws getting further, and that's where we were sort of like, just lie over here, and he'd hold it for a few frames and then he'd just spread. He's very good at spreading and taking up as much room as possible.
How did you set up your camera? How high is that?
So I've got a little Sony mirrorless camera.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So I had the remote control app on my phone, and there's a roof beam that runs right the way down through our living room. So we just duct taped it to the roof.
Amazing.
And you can kind of see it on some days where we reshot some stuff as part of the same scene, where the camera will just ever so slightly just nudge a little bit.
It's because we didn't want to leave it duct taped to the ceiling in case it fell down and landed on us.
Oh, you mean overnight? Yeah,
so we took it down each evening and stuck it back up the next day. Because when I first suggested it, I thought, oh, we'll just stick a GoPro up there on a GoPro mount. And Tom's like, no, I think we should use the main camera. And I'm like,
a proper camera, yeah.
How are we going to make that stay up there? And he's like, duct tape. So we ended up running around Asda in the whole kind of, we're doing an essential shot. We're getting bread and we're getting eggs. Where's the duct tape?
Love that.
So we could stick the camera to the ceiling. We did drop it a couple of times.
There was a couple of times where it just fell. Fortunately, it was while
we weren't under it.
My foot was under it, but we were standing on this little footstool that we've got.
Yeah.
But it just bounced off the footstool where it had a nice cushioned landing before it hit the floor.
It was a very squishy footstool, but I did scream at one moment because the battery thing flew out, and I thought we'd broken it, and I was like, oh my god, and Tom's like, no, it's fine, the catch isn't broken, we're still good. Oh, good, that's a relief. But
there's nothing exactly worse than that. It's when you've set something up, like my couple of things are lights. I put like too much weight on something, like there's a travel tripod. You see this bit of light behind me, so this is a third light that I've got, and it's on. I used to put this camera that I've got on the travel tripod with everything else, and it was ridiculous. This one's on a proper tripod, but you just think, it's gonna be fine, and then it just like fell to one side, and I was like, you feel like your soul's just been ripped out because it cost you so much money. You know what I mean? So yeah, I totally sympathize with that. I've done it a few times, and it happened once where it was a Sony A7S that I had, great camera, and I lent it to a friend of mine. I had it for years. I'd filmed with it, corporate stuff, weddings, short films, and when he returned it, and he's super reliable. He lives in the world himself, Will, and he had 2 scratches on the screen, and I was about to sell it like a month later to buy this camera, this Blackmagic, and he was like, when you're a child and you take something you've broken to a parent, it was like that with me. Like, what's happened? He says, I've scratched it. And I was like, devastated. Because I never normally drop stuff myself apart from a light and this travel tripod thing. So, I could totally sympathize. And thankfully you had that kind of cushion,
I mean, thankfully I got the camera secondhand originally, and it was going, but at the time about half the price what it was new.
Yeah.
Because it had 2 tiny scratches on the back screen.
Oh, yeah. It's nice when you buy something like that and you get a good price, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it only had it was less than 2,000 clicks on the shutter as well.
Oh, that's super low. That's super low. Yeah.
It was absolute dirt cheap for what it was. So I snatched it up.
Yeah, well, I think he did so are those slight shifts in the duct tape? Are they in the film?
Yes. So
frames occasionally.
If it's kind of, the visuals kind of masked out by the sound effects.
Yeah.
Kind of in a kind of weird way. But it's
totally
quite.
See what you mean,
Yeah, so it's because of the way the scene changes from where it was. Normally we shot the whole, if you see a set, we shot that set in one go. But there was there was one set where we had to do on 2 different days, which was when Steffi first comes into shot, when she pulls
with
me
the camera.
Yeah, so there's the point where we high five is actually where we had to reshoot something. So
we had to reshoot a certain section 3 times. And the first time was because up till that point I'd been the one controlling taking the photos, because I'd been out of frame and it was much easier for me to just press the button.
And you're doing that on the app.
Yeah. So I had Tom's phone, and so I'm off set, he's lying on set, and I'm running around like changing all the stuff around him, jumping out of frame, taking the picture, jumping back in, changing everything else. But when we were both in frame, then that became more tricky, because you didn't want us, holding the phone, taking the picture. So Tom had to put a 2-second delay on it.
So a 2-second delay where I'd throw the press it, throw it under me, get back into position,
and then it would take the picture, the camera,
and then it was kind of like you kind of go, hang on, so what position am I halfway through now? And
it became quite tricky, because when I was taking photos, I'd sort of say, I'm about to take a photo, and he wouldn't, he'd just take it. So I was never in the right position because I didn't know when he was taking the photos. So we had to reshoot that. And then we got quite far through doing it, and I turned to him and went, "You're wearing your socks!" And he sort of looked at me like, yeah. And I was like, you haven't been wearing socks the whole shoot. And it's at the most obvious point where you'd be able to see the fact that he wasn't, and then he was wearing socks. So we both just kind of screamed for about 10 seconds and then reset.
Oh, I know that scream. I know that. One of my good friends that he's emigrated to Australia with his family. He and I recreated, the scene where I see dead people from The Sixth Sense. So we did that stop animation with a couple of wooden puppets, but with every shot from the film, it was like a cutout of their faces put on the puppets. Okay. We spent hours. It's a similar technique to what you guys have done, and it took so long. But when you make those mistakes, it's like taking a punch in the gut, isn't it?
Yeah. I do remember sort of turning to Tom and going, "We've done this twice already."
Yeah, there's actually, to tell the truth, the socks are still in the film a little bit, but you have to know where to look for them. There's like one scene where I could get away with it, but they're only there for maybe like a second, maybe 2 seconds. I think it works out at about either 6 or 7 frames per second.
Okay.
So it may be like sort of 4 or 5 frames. He is miraculously suddenly wearing socks.
But it's at a point.
How long did your shoot take?
It was 3 afternoons of filming. Yeah, 3 afternoons of filming, and then I did it was almost a full day on all the audio. Yeah,
I can definitely tell that you took a long time on the audio because of the quality of it, especially the kind of the screaming, kind of echoey sounds and that kind of thing. There was a real sense of where your characters were, where you two were in the film, which is, as audio's half the battle, isn't it? Like visual important, but sounds just as important, I think.
Because I come from an audio background anyway, so that's partly why I did take my time on that a bit.
Yeah, he was sort of saying this is a point of professional pride for me. And then
like the van, yeah.
Well, then he started sort of saying, "Do you reckon I should do it so if you listen to it in stereo, that affects it?" And I was like, "Mate, most people are just going to see it on their phone." And he's going, "No, I reckon I can do it in stereo where the sound travels around." I was like, "I think you're overthinking
it." Tom and I are going to become very good friends based on that kind of thing. Definitely, because you do get those moments where first thing you think is, this is for me. I'm making this for me. I think most top filmmakers, they make the films for themselves, and then there's obviously an audience is let in. So I totally appreciate all the visuals and the audio work. I think it works. When people get to see it, they're going to love it because it is so different to all the others. We've got a real mix of films, and I'm really happy that we started this just to be able to see the breadth of what people are producing. We've got like animations about a fly in a house. What would a fly do during isolation? We've got diary entries from people in the US. It's like we've got one that's called Days, like Daisy. You know, the Brad Pitt film. It's what you would do when you go, past a certain point when you've got no food and that. So yeah, and yours is great. I absolutely loved it. And I know Chris. I know Chris loved it. Well, that's what you want, want people to be able to kind of express themselves, and I think we can see that everyone loved making what they did. So I really
we had a lot of fun with it. It was quite frustrating at times when I was storyboarding it, because sometimes I get a bit carried away trying to explain things. So to try and bypass that, I sketched everything out really, really badly with like stick figures, just so I could explain the plot that I had in my head to Tom. Like, this is what you got to do. This is what I want you to do. Originally, I wasn't really supposed to be in it much. But then I sort of kept thinking, well, how's he going to get out of this? I'm going to have to help him. So I ended up being in it as well.
I think that if you'd have just had one character, it would have been good, but it showed your character, you two, in terms of your connection between the two of you. I think that came across really well.
I'm glad, because I was sort of going, oh, should I be in it? It's sort of Tom's slacklining thing. Should I be in it? And he was like, yeah, go on, you should be in it as well. I'm like, well, the dog's clearly in it, so I might as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a through line of connection with a lot of these films in terms of people's relationships and how they're coping. And it's I think we really enjoyed it. I think a lot of people are going to as well.
Oh, I'm so glad, because we did have fun, and it passed some time, and we wouldn't have been able to do it because I'm not sure if you've noticed, but pretty much the entire set is made from carpet offcuts that were left over from the mad panic moving into the house. That's why we had so much blue material, because we've got a blue carpet on our stairs and landing, so it was all offcuts from that. The tree, the top of the tree is made from the underlay, like the leftover underlay.
Amazing.
So it's all sort of leftovers from our mad panic of unexpectedly having to move into this house. And the tips shut like the day after we got all the carpets in, so we haven't been able to throw any of it away. So yeah, they all became props and background for our project.
Well, I think the fact that you've given what I don't think anyone else has to this point. You've given a bit of context with your making of, which I really love. A little bit of, because I know how, Tom, how you're obsessed with the sound, because I can tell, I can hear it. I can hear it. You know what I mean? It's like when you're there and you've got, it's more narrow than narrow vision. You've got this kind of cyclops vision for what you want, So it definitely comes across. And it might be an easy answer, but how did you kind of come across the festival?
Is through Chris, actually, because so we've you see things pop up on social media, so that sort of started popping up in feeds, and it was kind of around the same time we were thinking of the idea anyway. So I sort of said, if we make this, maybe we should stick it in the festival.
And I sort of went, but it's going to be way too lame to put into a festival.
So when we put it on Facebook, and Chris eventually commented that this is awesome. And I was like, all right, is this one for the festival? Because yes, send me the link. Throw it in.
Yeah, I can see a very similar sense of humor between you and Chris as well. Because I've just posted up something that you may have already seen. It's called Little Chris, short film that he's made.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So yeah, I can definitely see the connection between the two of you. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on board, and more power to you as well. And I look, because this blog is fantastic. I'm going to post a link in the description to your Instagram, But yeah, insanely jealous. That's all I'm thinking.
Oh, thank you.
Shall I wake the dog up and bring him over to say?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Come here, pup. Come here.
Come on, Raph.
Come here, Raph. What's this?
Come on.
He's been lying next to us like the whole time. Do you want to take?
So how long have you had him?
It'll be 2.5 years.
He's got the treat. He's got the treat.
Amazing.
Yeah, it'll be 2.5 years we've had him now.
Do you want to grab him?
That's amazing.
He's like, no.
No.
Come here, puppy. Oh, you're such a spoiled sport. Just grab him. Oh, good grief.
There we go.
I thought you're going to carry him like, you know how farmers carry sheep?
Yeah.
The legs like that, yeah.
Yeah.
He's all, I'm so jealous. And the way kind of, if you can send me a link to the Freedom Bus, if that's a thing, if they do it online.
It's the charity that he comes from is Griffin Adopt, so they sort of charter the bus to come and bring the dogs.
Oh, I see. Right, is that how it works?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
We'll post a link to that as well.
Oh, it's brilliant because Griffins, they're such great dogs, aren't you? Although he's obviously not a pure Griffin. He was advertised as Griffin mix, heavy on the mix.
That's amazing.
Well, you're not really any breed, are you? You're miscellaneous.
Amazing.
Let me just see if I can get a link for you quickly.
Yeah, you send that over on an email or something. That'll be top draw. That yeah. But yeah, thanks again for coming on. And
no worries. Thank you for having me.
I'll see you soon.
Yeah, it's been nice chatting with you.
See you soon.